Recently, some news stories have emerged about North Korea, which are quite troubling, both in what they portend and in the inadequacy of the reporting of these stories. This is not surprising since most journalists know little or nothing about science, and very few of them have competent scientific personnel on hand to consult. So, let's talk a little bit about what has recently happened in North Korea. This is a picture of the first ever plutonium fission bomb. This is an implosion bomb. That means that the plutonium core, which is about the size of a softball, is completely surrounded by, you can see, large quantities of explosives. There are two control boxes, one on the front, one on the back. Each of them has 32 cables coming out of it. And these 32 cables go to 32 independent sets of detonators on the surface of the bomb. You can see some of them on the front. It looks like a very sloppy wiring job, but there is a purpose in that. If you add 1 foot to the length of a wire, you will introduce a delay of 1 nanosecond in the time it takes a pulse to get through to the detonator. So the easiest way to deal with this problem is to make all the wires exactly the same length. That way you get the same delay in each one. Now this next picture shows the dear leader with what the North Koreans have claimed is an atomic bomb. And you can see it's quite a lot smaller than the previous one, so they've done some work on miniaturizing it. And it also has a metal object sticking out of the top around the 1 o'clock position. This is an initiator. The way that this type of atomic bomb works is that when the explosive goes off, the explosion wave comes inward and compresses this softball-size object into a tennis ball-size object. At that moment, it is a critical mass. But if you just leave it, it's going to rebound again. So you have to do something to get the critical mass started in its fission process. In that large original bomb you saw, there was a little thing called an urchin at the very center. This was a mechanical neutron generator. In the one that the dear leader is examining here, there's clearly another kind of neutron generator, which we'll talk about later. Now, the American government kind of poo-pooed the yield of this latest nuclear test. If you look at this diagram, this is information from a completely independent source, the Test Ban Treaty Organization, I believe it's in Geneva. And I trust the information from this source because these people don't have an agenda. Under the current management, the U.S. government is not a reliable source of information about anything because basically they have an agenda. They want to affect how we feel about things, how we perceive our president and his administration. So you can't trust them. They lie. This is not a lie. And this says that the latest nuclear test from North Korea had a yield, probably at least 100,000 tons of TNT, up to maybe 600,000, and possibly a megaton, 1 million tons. Now, let's talk a little bit about hydrogen bombs and understand what all this portends. This is a diagrammatic version of a hydrogen bomb. You see on the left there is a primary, which is just an atomic bomb, like that spherical one the dear leader was admiring. And the part you see on the right is the secondary. That's the part where the thermonuclear fusion takes place. It's been said that if you were to open a hydrogen bomb, you would see a basketball and a trash can corresponding to the primary and the secondary. Now, if we look at the pictures of the dear leader examining this latest bomb, we see that it's kind of peanut-shaped. This might seem strange to us at first, but if you look at the next diagram, this one comes from a book by Dan Stober and Ian Hoffman called A Convenient Spy, Wen-Ho Lee and the Politics of Nuclear Espionage. This diagram should never have been released. What happens sometimes in the case of court proceedings is that things which should be kept secret are revealed in order to get the verdict you want. If you look carefully at this, you see the usual cone shape of a re-entry vehicle, but inside it you see a peanut-shaped object. This object doesn't have quite the same proportions as the one that the dear leader was examining. You can see that the primary, which is the part at the top of this diagram, is no longer a sphere. It's been converted to a football-shaped object. The reason being that with this shape of primary, you only need 2 detonators, one at each of the pointy ends. Unlike the 32 detonators in the original bomb and whatever number they have in the North Korean bomb. You can see also that the shape of the secondary has changed. Unlike the trash can shape in the previous diagram, this one is a sphere. Now, if we look again at the North Korean object, we see that it is 2 spheres connected together to make the peanut shape. But if we look at it from the thick end, you see that black object sticking out? That's a neutron generator. That tells you that the bigger sphere here is the primary, the fission bomb. And the smaller sphere, the secondary, is at the other end. Let's talk about what's in that black object. This is a diagram from a Russian website of a plasma-focused chamber-based pulse neutron generator for research activities. Well, it isn't just research activities. It'll also work to set off an atomic bomb. So basically, the Russian government would be happy to sell you one of these. They cost $100,000, maybe $200,000. And it saves you the trouble of having to invent a neutron generator yourself, which is quite a task. This next picture shows an American-made neutron generator. We sell them too. Now you might ask, why? If these things are so useful for setting off fission bombs, why are they sold on the open market? Well, it's not quite the open market. You have to submit a bunch of paperwork that says you're not going to use it to make a bomb, but everybody can lie on paperwork. The valid reason for selling these neutron generators is to detect the attempted transportation of fissile materials across national borders. Basically, if you have a quantity of plutonium or of highly enriched uranium and you want to smuggle it into a different country, it's not as hard as you might think, simply because those substances are not very radioactive. They're only a little radioactive. You put some lead around them, you're never going to see them. However, if you subject every package that comes into your country with a pulse of neutrons generated either from ours or the Russians' neutron generator, then what will happen is you'll start a little bit of fission in that package. And that little bit of fission produces a small amount of fission products, which are very radioactive materials. So you will see a pulse, a strong pulse of penetrating radiation, gamma rays, in response to sending a pulse of neutrons into a package containing fissile material. So that's the legitimate reason for people selling neutron generators. Now let's talk about the implications of all this. I like to say that a man who has a hydrogen bomb is a strong man. But a man who uses a hydrogen bomb is a weak man. Once you've used the thing, you are subject to all kinds of hell coming down on you. So basically, the use of a bomb like this is as a threat, not really to kill many of your enemies. So how many of your enemies would a bomb like this kill? Well, I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. About 700,000 population, surrounded by suburbs with many more. If a bomb like this landed on Milwaukee, Wisconsin, was detonated above Milwaukee, Wisconsin, it would vaporize the center of the city out to about a mile, and it would incinerate the suburbs. This is an important thing to keep in mind. This is a deadly weapon on a scale way beyond what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. No one has ever been subjected to this, but it would be terrible. And it would lead to the complete annihilation of whoever had sent it, if we knew who that was. And in the case of North Korea, I think we would know. So, we have to realize that the North Koreans are doing this in order to get our attention, in order to scare us out of attacking them. If we had a competent government, they would be working hard to accomplish a diplomatic solution to this mess. But what we have is a government of bullies, people who think that threats of force will accomplish their goals, and an oil company executive who's never done any diplomacy before. This is a problem, and I hope all Americans realize exactly what kind of problem this is and how it can be fixed.